ESPN1080.com presents the preview of the Floyd Mayweather Jr. against Victor Ortiz fight here. I'm Eric Lopez, your ESPN 1080 insider, alongside Brian Wininger, who's normally doing MMA, but tonight you're going to talk some boxing, aren't you, Brian?
I love boxing. I love the fight game in general.
And we got a great guest to join us to break down the fight. He covers NBA basketball for Real GM, but I know him for a long time. His real passion, the sweet science of boxing. Jarrod Rudolph joins us. Jarrod, it's an honor.
Pleasure to be here with you guys.
Give me your thoughts here, obviously. Floyd Mayweather, Victor Ortiz, here we are. How did we get to this fight?
Well, Victor, he did a good job of rebuilding his image after the unfortunate incident with Maidana. He took that loss and, he was fighting well. He decided that he had enough punishment and he walked away. He's had some good wins after that. Knocked out Berto. Well, he beat Berto. And he earned himself a big payday with Floyd. So, congratulations to Victor. But, he's in with a different animal in Floyd Mayweather Jr. And it's nothing like he's seen before. And I just don't think that this kid has, at this point in his career, what it takes to get the job done.
You mentioned Victor Ortiz, 29-2-2 on the year, 22 knockouts. Great power for a southpaw.
No, great power. I mean, it's not about whether he's right-handed or left-handed. It actually works to his advantage because Floyd typically takes 3 or 4 rounds to get accustomed to fighting southpaws. But he's a big, nice, strong fighter, power in both hands. But, sometimes when you have that power, it changes the way that you attack your opponent. You're always looking for the big shot. And he landed a lot of big shots against Andre Berto and also against Lamont Peterson. And you're not going to find Floyd in the same way. So you have to be able to mix it up. And his style just isn't conducive to him being successful against Floyd unless he catches Floyd with something that he doesn't see big and he can put Floyd down for a 10.
You mentioned Victor Ortiz-Berto fight. That was back in April. Might be the fight of the year to this point in boxing. Both guys were knocked down twice. Ortiz gets the decision. I mean, take me back. I mean, that was a big moment. You mentioned Berto was undefeated at the time, really looked to be the up-and-comer. Take me back through that fight for maybe those that missed it.
Well, Victor Ortiz had everything to prove. He had worked his way to get back to have a championship title fight against a guy of the stature of Berto. Berto was looking to get into the ring with Floyd or Pacquiao. And Victor came in and just stole the show. He fought with a lot of passion, a lot of heart. Different than what happened against Maidana when he started taking that punishment. He came back, and he was able to hold on. It was a great fight. He showed great skills. He showed great courage. And it just looked like he was reborn in that fight. You just saw a guy that really, really wanted to go ahead and get that championship and make everyone forget about him quitting against Maidana. And he did a good job. In the interim, he gets himself a big payday and an opportunity to really put himself on the big stage in boxing if he can pull off this miracle.
He gets himself in the spotlight. Floyd Mayweather back. Last fight, of course, last May. Unanimous decision over Shane Mosley for Floyd. Why come back? I mean, he took another time off. Obviously still has the interest in fighting. Are you surprised he's back, or was this pretty much what you were expecting around the same time frame?
Not at all. I mean, when he beat Shane, he had taken an extended period of time off. Look, you have to understand something. Everyone wants to see the fight with Pacquiao. And the Pacquiao fight falling through a couple of times, this is where these big stretches of time are coming in for Floyd. After he beat Juan Manuel Marquez, we thought that he was going to fight Pacquiao. It fell through. After he beat Shane, we were thinking that he was going to fight Pacquiao. It falls through. And Floyd's making so much money from these fights that he doesn't have to get back in the ring immediately. Now, he's not a guy that takes a lot of punishment, but he's always training, he's always in the ring. So he really can enjoy the fruits of his labors like no one else in the sport right now. So there's really no reason for Floyd to jump back in the ring. He can sit down, he can, view the landscape. He's his own boss, so he can make sure that he's picking the right opponents, picking the right times, make sure he's feeling 100%, healthy when he's getting back in there. And, he's very, very smart about the way he conducts business. He's very smart about the way he conducts business. And the way he keeps his body in shape. He weighed in today at 146.5. Now, when you take 16 months off and you can come back and weigh in at that tells me and everyone else that knows boxing that you're staying in shape. So he's constantly fighting. So anyone looking for ring rust after 16 months, you won't be finding it, at least not on Floyd's side. I mean, the guy's he's a machine. He's a boxing machine. His training camp is like going to medical school. They have a system, and it works. And, he's by far the best fighter of this era, and if he can continue to rack up victories, and this would be a big victory for him on Saturday night, Floyd pretty soon is going to put himself, amongst the greats of all time.
Now you talk about Mayweather being a great businessman, Money Mayweather, which he is, I have a theory that he's not fighting Pacquiao because they know that this is the pinnacle and this is as big as it's going to get. Is that fair to say? Do you think they're pushing the fight back because he once you fight Pacquiao and once you start that trilogy, perhaps it's not really going to go much from there?
Floyd's the first. It won't be a trilogy with Pacquiao. It'll be one fight. It'll be a $60 million fight. Floyd is the cash guy in boxing right now. So when you're fighting Floyd, you're going to get your biggest payday, and Floyd's going to continue to get 25, 30 million for each fight. He is just the cash cow right now in boxing. The reason he hasn't fought Manny Pacquiao yet is because Pacquiao won't agree to the test.
Right.
You know, I know people don't like Mayweather. I don't particularly care for some of his antics. I think that a lot of time he moves in ignorance. But in terms of what he does in that ring and everything around boxing, you cannot dispute this man if you're being honest about boxing. If you're being honest about his skill. Yeah, a lot of stuff people say that he's scared of Manny Pacquiao and Manny Pacquiao beat him. It's nonsense. Like, it's absolute nonsense. If Pacquiao takes the test, Floyd beats Pacquiao 2 years ago. And we're moving on, and Floyd's beating other guys and getting the $20 and $30 million paydays. Now, maybe at some point you have to revisit one of these guys that you beat if they can do what Victor Ortiz has done and rebuild themselves after the defeat that Floyd has given them. But Floyd, no matter who he fights, because of the interest that he generates, not only with people that want to continue to see how far Floyd can take this thing, but people that want to see Floyd lose, it brings Floyd $25 million paydays every time he gets in the ring. So Floyd doesn't need Pacquiao to continue to be Money Mayweather.
No, that's a great point. Now, take me through why pick Victor Ortiz as his next fight. Give me the mindset in the Mayweather camp picking Victor Ortiz.
Well, I think that Victor Ortiz had a lot to do with that. I believe the initial plan was to go for Berto, who at the time was undefeated, young up-and-comer, champion, great punching power. Obviously, he's not in Floyd's class, but that would have been a great fight to see getting ready for a potential Pacquiao fight. Victor Ortiz came and crashed the party. You know, he said, I want to be in this foursome also. I want to be able to fight Pacquiao. I want to be able to get another fight with Berto. I want to get in there with Floyd. So Floyd has to fight guys that are winning. That's what he does. Floyd fights guys that are winning. He does not fight guys coming off losses. And Victor just took the opportunity away from Andre Berto, and you got to tip your hat to him. So that's what it was. Floyd fights quality opposition. And for him to come out, because he doesn't have to fight Victor Ortiz. He doesn't need Victor Ortiz's title, and he doesn't need the money he's going to get for Victor. He could wait until Manny and Juan Manuel get it on again and fight either one of those guys and make $30 million. So for him to get in the ring against this young lion is a treat to boxing fans. It is really a testament to how serious Floyd takes his skills, takes the sport of boxing, and, you know, just the understanding that he has to continue to fight quality opposition.
Does his annex, you mentioned that, I mean, is off the ring stuff he's gone through. Of course, people that have watched 24/7 on HBO have seen that little verbal confrontation he had with his father. Him and his father don't get along. You're right. The perception of him is not positive by the media. It's like the bad guy. Does that get lost in the greatness that is Mayweather? He is one of the greatest fighters of all time, yet people focus on the antics. Does it hurt him?
Yeah, absolutely. It hurts him in terms of, you know, public relations. I mean, you don't see Floyd in the commercials. You see Manny Pacquiao singing and, you know, HP commercials, all that stuff. It hurts him there, but fans are fickle. You know, when they like you, they'll defend you, you know, to the death. When they don't, they look for any and everything to try to take you down. You know, now they're saying that Floyd Mayweather's a dirty fighter. You know, he's scared of Pacquiao. He's never fought anybody. Things are just, you know, incorrect. And, you know, you look at it, and I can't speak to Floyd's personal life. I don't know Floyd personally. I've never been around him in a personal space, and I choose to give a man an opportunity to tell his side of the story. So, you know, the outside troubles that he gets into, you know, you want to pay him that respect. However, the things that he does on 24/7 to represent the boxer, to create this villain that is Money Mayweather, it moves in ignorance. And I look at him and I shake my head because I think to myself, yo, you have children. And at this point, everything you're doing is for your children. You want to set your children up to be in a better place than you were when you were their age. But they got to come back and watch this. And you don't want your children seeing you on television making yourself look like a fool. It has to be more than Money Mayweather. It has to be more than making $1. You're already great. You're already rich. So what's next? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to look at you? Because it has to be more than just the skills, because they're not giving you credit for the skills because they don't like you. And I'm not telling him to kowtow and be anybody that he's not, but he needs to humble himself. He needs to humble himself quickly or perhaps some of these opportunities that are there for Floyd, they're not there anymore. He speaks a lot about his faith and his religion and his belief in his God-given ability. Well, before honor comes humility, and if you don't humble yourself, then the man that is responsible for your skill will give you a reason to humble yourself. And that could be Victor Ortiz. That can be the North Nevada Police Department. That can be one of these various court cases that he has. And it could even be Manny Pacquiao. But that's up to Floyd to humble himself to make sure that those things don't happen. I will give him credit because he takes his craft very, very serious. He understands that boxing is his bread and butter. But still in all, you have to be humble so it all comes together. And Floyd is just not a humble person. I just don't think that it's simply an act to push this villain that he has created, Money Mayweather.
Ultimately, when it's all said and done, he has to fight Pacquiao, right?
No, Pacquiao needs. Why does Floyd Mayweather, 41-0, 6-time world champion in 5 different weight classes, who has not only never lost a fight but been in very few close ones, why does he have to fight Manny Pacquiao?
Because Pacquiao's the guy out there who people compare him to as one of the best fighters of all time, and if Mayweather goes his career without fighting one of those guys, then it's kind of a
Manny Pacquiao needs to fight Floyd. It's not the other way around. Floyd doesn't need Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's new money. Okay, they said the same thing about Ricky Hatton that they're saying about Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah, but Ricky Hatton doesn't compare to Pacquiao.
But when Floyd beats Pacquiao, everyone would say the same thing. There's some realities about Pacquiao that people want to look at. One, Pacquiao does not fight winning fighters. Okay, everyone that Pacquiao was fighting, with the exception of Juan Manuel Marquez, is coming off of a loss or some time off. Okay, he does not fight winning fighters. 2, he's lost before. Okay, 3, he's lost recently. And when you look at the Juan Manuel Marquez fights, if we're being honest, he beat him twice. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about comparing a guy that's very popular to a guy that is excellent. This kid can't beat Floyd Mayweather.
But isn't that what perception is? Isn't perception reality at some point in this?
Yeah, perception is reality, but every opinion has some type of truth to it. If you want to be honest and talk about Floyd Mayweather, there is no one right now, especially in this weight class, that you can compare to him. There's one fighter that you can say, you know what, I look at his skill and I look at what he's doing, I say, man, he would be someone that I would say I would make an argument as being better than Floyd or as dominant as Floyd, and that's Bernard Hopkins. Now, those two are never going to mix it up. But what you're going to find is Floyd beats Pacquiao, and people are going to start saying that Pacquiao was too old, or he waited too long, or Pacquiao was too small. So now they're going to want to put Floyd in the ring with guys that are 160, 165 pounds because you want to see him lose.
I think if Floyd ultimately fights Pacquiao and he beats Pacquiao, Floyd can pretty much hang him up right there.
Floyd can hang him up now. Like, what does beating a guy like Pacquiao do for Floyd?
It puts the stamp on his career that he is the best, and he during his career he fought the best and he beat the best.
But he's fought the best and beat the best now.
Not Pacquiao.
But Pacquiao's not the best. Pacquiao doesn't represent the best.
I think he does.
How?
Just because of his perception and who he's fought.
Okay, we got through perception. Let's talk about the facts.
Well, I mean, Pacquiao from a national standpoint is a huge draw. Huge draw. Sells millions
Let's
of
talk about
pay-per-view
what he's
buys.
doing in the ring, because there's a lot of people that sell a lot
He's
of fights.
finishing people. He's knocking people out.
But who is he fighting? Who is he fighting that you can say, well, he wasn't supposed to knock that guy out? I mean, a flat-footed Antonio Margarito coming off of a loss in a long-term suspension. A Joshua Clotley that's coming off of a loss that don't want to throw any punches.
Well, I mean, at the time, these guys were contenders. At the they threw him in Pacquiao to contend.
Every single fight that Pacquiao has won, his last 4 have been against guys coming off losses. He beat Shane after Floyd destroyed Shane, who was coming off of a win against Antonio Margarito. He beat Antonio Margarito after he was coming off a long suspension. He beat Ricky Hatton after Ricky Hatton lost to Floyd so bad that he changed his whole training camp. Hired Floyd's father to come in and teach him how to box.
Yeah, see, I agree with. I think Floyd is the best fighter of our generation, hands down. But I feel that in order for him to get that perception that he is the greatest, he has to prove all those naysayers wrong. Whether it's right or wrong, people want Pacquiao Mayweather. That's just what it is.
But you're right that people want Pacquiao Mayweather, but they also wanted De La Hoya Mayweather. What happened? Floyd wipes De La Hoya out. Then they say, okay, well, let's get him in there against Ricky Hatton. Wipes Ricky Hatton out.
Right.
So when he beats De La Hoya's too old. When he beats Ricky Hatton can't fight. When he beats Juan Manuel Marquez, who they rated as number 2, not Floyd, he's too small. When he beats Shane, he's too old. When he beats Victor Ortiz, they're going to say that he was too inexperienced.
Right,
when
that's why he needs
Pacquiao,
to fight.
they're going to say they're going to make another.
Then let him say that once he fights Pacquiao. But once they fight Pacquiao, we'll never know.
Well, I'm going to agree with Jarrod I think they both. I don't think one guy needs the fight more than the other. I think they both equally need the fight. If you're going to say Mayweather quote needs the fight, I think Pacquiao needs the fight just as much.
No.
I think it's unfair to say, well, Mayweather needs this fight.
No, I agree with that.
Would you not agree?
No, Mayweather doesn't need a fight. Mayweather doesn't need to fight the rest of his career.
I like to see Floyd. It's the same thing with Miguel Cotto. I'd like to see Floyd beat Pacquiao,
right,
just to shut people up, because this whole illusion that they've created, and it's an old trick in boxing. And Bob Arum, he knows what he's doing because he's been around a long time. You use the fight that everyone wants to see to promote the fight that's happening now.
Sure.
You use Floyd to make Manny $25 million when he really should only be making 15, fighting guys that are losing, because you make everyone think that this is going to be the fight before he gets in the ring with Floyd.
So welterweight division, where do you rank Pacquiao right now? He's not number 2? You think Victor Ortiz is number 2?
Let me ask you this while you think about that.
I'll put him behind Floyd.
Let me ask you, how much of this is style? People like Pacquiao's style. He tries to go for the knock. He throws more punches. You know how it is. People are always critical of Mayweather. Oh, he goes for the decision. He doesn't go for the knockout, which I think is unfair. I mean, it's boxing. That's what you're trying to win a fight.
But again,
how much of that plays a role in this?
Well, I mean, it really depends on who you ask. In terms of my opinion that Floyd will wipe this guy out is about. Floyd is a master boxer. He's a surgeon. Floyd's in a different class of athlete. Floyd is Peyton Manning. He's Tiger Woods. He's Kobe Bryant. He's Ken Griffey Jr. He's Barry Bonds. He's that type of athlete. Manny Pacquiao is exciting. He throws a lot of punches. The guy can't defend. He can't get out of the way of punches. If you go back and you look at his fight against Shane Mosley, the only reason Shane lost that fight is because he didn't give himself an opportunity to win it. All Shane did was circle the Pacquiao's left the whole night, and he couldn't catch what they said was an old Shane Mosley. If Shane would have attempted to counter Pacquiao, he would have been closer in that fight. Now, when you look at styles, because everyone knows in boxing, styles make fights. You look at the guys that have been successful against Pacquiao, and again, I'm going to point to Juan Manuel Marquez, a counterpuncher. When you put pressure on a counterpuncher, a good counterpuncher, you're going to get picked apart. This is what Floyd is. His foundation is built in defense and fundamentals. The more you attack him, the more opportunities he's going to take to pick you apart. But what does Manny Pacquiao do when he gets in trouble? See, people like him because he goes in there and he gets into walls.
He goes in and finishes,
right.
Yeah.
There's nothing cool about taking punishment, okay? All it does is open you up to be knocked down, to get cut, all these different things, and you let a fighter get lucky. Floyd's he's a surgeon. He's not going to give you that opportunity while throwing statistically the highest punch ratio, the highest accuracy ratio in the history of boxing. He does not fatigue. He does not get hit. His fights are not even close. He makes great fighters look like amateurs. It's a no contest. But again, people don't like Floyd.
Right, which I think plays a role in this, don't you think?
And it's an unfortunate thing in boxing because it's always like this. I mean, they do it to every great boxer. They did it to Roy Jones. Oh, he never fought. He fought mailmen. He fought policemen and cab drivers. But when Roy's beating him, he's great. Bernard Hopkins, they don't want to give Bernard Hopkins his due. Now Bernard Hopkins is almost 50 years old. He's still beating guys.
Well, see, I agree with you, and I don't buy that argument that Floyd hasn't fought anyone. First of all, Floyd hasn't lost, so you can't. What do you expect him to do? You know what I mean? It's like he's got to win. It's the whole Boise State thing in college football. Sure. They're 11-0, but they don't play anyone.
Fight what you can control.
You know what I mean?
But Floyd is beating champions. He's
right.
beating undefeated.
He's fought who he needed to fight. And if you don't like the competition that he's been going against, then that's your issue with it. But he can only control what he can control, and he's been perfect to this point. Quick word, because I think Bernard Hopkins might be one of the most underrated fighters in the history. We keep talking Pacquiao, Mayweather. Hopkins never gets any love. Why is that?
I have no idea, but he's one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen.
He's still fighting.
I mean,
fantastic fighter,
incredible defensive fighter, smart, takes great care of his body, and you just look at guys like Bernard and you look at guys like Floyd, whose fundamentals are based off defense and counterpunching and taking care of your body and just ring generalship, and you just look at how successful they are. Because even when Bernard loses,
sure,
it's close. Like, no one wipes Bernard out, and I don't think anyone would ever wipe Floyd out again unless you catch him with something big and he just can't recover from it. And that can happen to anybody. It's happened to Pacquiao twice.
Happens to everybody. Yeah.
But I mean, why Bernard doesn't get his credit? Who knows? I mean, boxers are like that. You get this public and they believe they know everything about sports in general, but boxing, and you look at it from the outside and you say, oh, he can't take a punch, or he can't. These guys are the greatest conditioned athletes in the world, and you talk about sports compared to everything else. I mean, this is the realest sport that you can ever be in. I mean, look, you know, in boxing, if you break a guy's rib, you're doing something great. If that guy with his rib broken decides that he's not fighting anymore, he's done something wrong. That's the reality of boxing. How could you ever doubt what any of these guys do, whether they're a level A or a level B fighter?
Right. Put it on the line.
Does it hurt boxing that it's not about the belt anymore?
Let's get into it. Let's get into the sport of boxing. Where are we at right now? Let's start with that.
It does, because what you've done is, to be a champion used to mean something. Like in every other sport, it means something, right?
Sure.
NBA champion, it means something. Super Bowl champion, Stanley Cup champion.
Even back in the day, you knew who the heavyweight champion was. You knew who the champ was.
Now you have so many versions of a championship belt. It's just like they're giving them out to anyone, and it's taking the word champion and it's taking some luster from it.
Sure.
Now you have guys that say, well, you know what, you keep the belt. I'm not going to pay your sanctioning fees. I don't want it. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to fight. And I'll take the pound-for-pound rankings because everyone knows I'm the best anyway. And, you know, the corruption in boxing, guys trying to make a quick buck, not thinking of, you know, the long term, it kills boxing, because how can't you have a defined champion? And why doesn't that mean something anymore? To be a champion. Floyd will walk out to the ring second. Victor Ortiz is the defending champion. No one cares. No one wants to see Pacquiao and Floyd fight for a belt.
No, exactly.
They'll watch them fight in the alley.
Yep.
But Victor Ortiz can fight another champion and unify the entire division. It wouldn't even be a pay-per-view fight. Champion, the word champion in boxing it's just been tarnished and tainted like no other sport I've ever seen.
And that's because of multiple promotions, and that's just maybe
not
money,
so much
greed.
Not so much the promotions, but the difference, you know, WBC, IBF, WBA, which I consider to be the, you know, the real bets. WBC, you know, that's the belt.
Right.
But then you get the WBO and all these other alphabet champions, and you just can't keep up with them anymore. And it doesn't matter, because you get some bum that has a belt, and it doesn't mean anything, and he can defend that belt 10 times. At the end of the day, you can say, you know, I defended my title 10 times. Well, what title? Who'd you beat?
Right.
It doesn't matter anymore. And, you know, that's not the fault of the boxers, but, you know, the parties that be. And that's when, you know, when you talk about the direction that boxing is going and why it's struggling, that's when the promoters come in and the guys, and, you know, Jose Suleiman and just, you know, the ridiculous stuff that he does. That's what messes up boxing as a whole. The sport is still great. You still have great fighters. But because those little things are so off base, and it's like in no other sport, it kills the sport of boxing.
Is boxing in trouble?
No, not at all. Boxing's not in trouble.
Is it healthy?
Boxing's okay. The problem is you have things emerging around it. The NBA's popularity is up. The NFL is the NFL. MMA has come, and I'm not even going to say MMA has come. The UFC. And Dana White have come and made their niche.
Absolutely.
And they're doing this while you're still looking for an American heavyweight champion, and you're still looking for some changes in boxing. You know, do something to these judges that are coming up with these bad decisions. Let's clean up this championship mess, and you know, and make that word mean something again. You know, the sport itself, what goes on in that ring, the training, that's still pure. That's still great. It's everything that goes on around it, and these other organizations have their stuff in check, because at the end of the day, we know that Anderson Silva is the champion in UFC. We know that the Dallas Mavericks are the NBA champion. We know that the Green Bay Packers are the Super Bowl champions. We know that there will be a Major League Baseball champion in a couple of months. We don't know who.
Is that the number one thing? Is that the number one thing you would fix right now? If I put you in charge, I say, Jarrod, fix boxing. Is that the number one thing you would do? What would you do?
Well, first of all, I you know, to fix boxing, I need an American heavyweight champion. I need an American heavyweight, because when the heavyweight division is great, everyone pays attention to boxing. I cannot tell you why, but when the heavyweight division is great, everyone is starting to boxing. Also, I would go back to the roots, and I would start putting fights on Saturday afternoons.
Ooh, I like that.
Like ABC, Wild World of Sports.
Get back on regular networks, right?
A couple of network fights. Doesn't always have to be 11 o'clock at night boxing. You know, there's a lot of people that'll watch Floyd or, you know, Berto, a rematch between Berto and Ortiz at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. I would start doing that again. I would also do something about this judging system. Now, I don't like the public judging when you're letting the fighters know what the score is in the middle of the fight, but you got to hold judges accountable, hold the referees accountable. I would clean up the championships, and if in any way possible, create one champion, or get it back to the 3 belts, the red, the green, and the black. if you could do that and get rid of these other ones, and then you come up with some official rating system that changes on a month-to-month basis, so you keep the intrigue. Something like, you know, the pound-for-pound ratings, but you just want to update them because that gives fighters an incentive to stay active, and it gives them the incentive to stay public. I think that no matter what happens with Floyd and Victor on Saturday, you probably won't see or hear anything from them until it's the next time for them to get back in the ring. And you don't have that with other sports. You know, you get to see what's going to go on or hear what's going to go on with other sports immediately after a loss or a week afterwards. And with boxing, you know, boxers can too easily vanish, and then you lose the interest when you vanish. So those would be the little things that I would change. But I still think that the core of boxing is there.
All right, the big question, the popular question. This is where I think you two will go different ways. Will UFC pass boxing?
No.
Why not?
What do you mean pass? In what?
Popularity, interest, making more money. I mean, all of the above. Will UFC be covered more than boxing in, say, 5 years?
Yeah, it'll be covered more. Yes, absolutely.
Broadcast, more popular. You don't buy it. Why not, Jarrod?
Popular. It depends on who you ask. I mean, because you can make the argument that it's more popular now.
Right. Well, we made the argument that boxing has 2 stars in Mayweather and Pacquiao that the UFC, no one draws like Manny and Pacquiao does in the UFC, star-wise. But as a collective sport, there's just so many other fights that get put on per year.
Well, see, here's the problem. UFC is representing MMA as a whole.
Right. It's like NFL. NFL to football.
But no, NFL is football. NBA is basketball. This is what we do, right? But
now that's how the UFC is.
MMA, there's Strikeforce.
Not anymore. Well, UFC bought Strikeforce. So, UFC is the NFL. So when UFC represents MMA as a whole, when there's nothing else out there, when there's no other options, then fine, because you can't talk about UFC. Hold on, you can't talk about UFC against boxing. UFC is an organization within right, it's MMA
sport.
Against boxing.
Okay,
correct.
So when you talk about MMA, that's where you have to look at it. And popular, sure, it's popular, but there's some issues I have with you can't, as a ex-football player or ex-basketball player or just some big guy that used to be at a club, get into a boxing ring and think that you're going to be any good. You can't get into a boxing ring and have 6 fights and get a title shot. And as much as I respect what these guys in MMA do, you get a Brock Lesnar that comes out of nowhere.
Who was an All-American wrestler.
Okay, but
in Minnesota.
He was an All-American wrestler. He was a WWE champion. He went and tried out for the Minnesota Vikings, didn't make it.
Right.
Then after all of that, he decided, you know what? I want to give this MMA thing a chance. And he beat guys that had legitimate skills only because of his size. After 6 fights, he has a title belt.
Right. Well, boxing's more of a skill. Boxing is a single art form skill. It's the art of punching, pretty much. MMA is the art of fighting.
Right.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. It's the art of fighting.
So I agree with you.
I respect the fighters, but you get an MMA contest where you get a superior fighter losing to a bigger guy.
No, win. Maybe 3-4 years ago. Not now.
And listen, I'm not sure what would happen if I saw Brock Lesnar on the street, so I don't want to offend the man, but I'm going to tell you something else. Most of the guys that Brock Lesnar has beat have been more skilled than him. He's just bigger and hits a little harder. And that doesn't add to the allure.
You're taking away from Lesnar's talent, though. I mean, he was an amateur wrestler.
He doesn't tap anybody. He's punching people in the face, ground and pound. When did he ever do that when he was wrestling?
What do you mean?
He went to University of Iowa, correct?
Minnesota.
Okay. So when he was wrestling at the University of Minnesota, when did he ever pick someone up, slam him, and just start go ground and pound on him?
Well, I mean, you could slam people in wrestling, but
when did he ever slam anyone and go ground and pound?
I don't know.
How many of his MMA fights has he won like that?
Maybe one. Maybe Shane Carwin.
He's won. Now, again, what was my man's name? I think it was Frank Mir.
Frank Mir,
the
former
second
champion.
Time. Now, Frank Mir. I like Frank. Frank Mir is a better fighter than Brock Lesnar. In the first round, he was beating him.
See, I don't think he
Brock
is.
Do? He lays on him. He chokes him. That to me doesn't represent when I look at an MMA fighter. I look at a guy like Anderson Silva. Skills. You know, he can beat you in so many different ways, and he is the person I would say, okay, when you look at MMA, this is the guy that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the guy right here that can do it in a lot of different ways. He's showing you what the art of fighting is. I can fight with my feet. I can fight with my hands. I can beat you in different ways. Where you have guys that are just coming out of nowhere, coming from
like Brock Lesnar is the only guy you're telling me about, but he really didn't come out of nowhere.
He's the main one. Where did he come from? He didn't come from a fighting background.
Yeah, but MMA wasn't established back in the day. Who knows? 10 years from now, 15 years from now, he might have been an MMA fighter. He was just so big and such a great wrestler. He had that wrestling base. In the MMA world, that that is a great base to have. And you're a heavyweight wrestler. He's got some skills, and he's a great athlete.
So this is what we do. In 15 years, we'll come back and we'll have the same conversation, and we'll see where MMA is at then. But it needs more time, more seasoning, more development, because you have to get the guy. Listen, no fighter in any sport should have a championship around his waist after 6 fights.
If he earned it, he beat the fighter.
Who could you possibly beat in 6 fights?
It's only Brock Lesnar. You beat former champions. You beat Frank Mir. He beat Shane Carwin.
Yeah,
you know, he beat.
I mean, I know where Jarrod's saying. He was very quick. He was very fast.
Yeah, but that's Brock Lesnar.
One example
of nature.
But boxing happens too. That's not. I mean, that's
name one champion after 6 fights.
Name one
Mike
champion.
Tyson when he came out of from jail. Got a quick title fight.
Okay, now we're talking about Mike Tyson. We're talking 40, like it was 41-1 going in.
Sure,
but again, now we've already spoken about the corruption in boxing.
Absolutely.
So of course, when you get Mike Tyson coming back, you're going to automatically put him at some point where if he wins a couple of fights, he's going to earn a title shot against a Bruce Seldon who shouldn't have had the title in the first place, against a Frank Bruno who held the title only when Tyson wasn't there.
Correct.
And he beat those guys. Do I agree with it? No. Do I understand it? Yes. But he had 40+ fights in a 5-year reign as champion before he gets in. Brock Lesnar is getting a championship shot after his 4th fight. That hurts the legitimacy.
I don't agree with that. I think they're both unique cases. It's a unique case. They're both shows. They draw more than the general fan. They draw the casual fan. That's why they got in. Let's be honest. It's all about the popularity of money. And
listen. You'll catch me at Buffalo Wild Wings watching an MMA fight. I won't pay for it on pay-per-view unless it's Anderson Silva. But you'll catch me watching the fight. Absolutely, I like what they do. But I'm not going to compare it to boxing until you get more of the skill and less of the size shown. Yes, I've only given you Brock Lesnar as an example, but Brock Lesnar is a pretty big example because he was one fight from being a face. Oh, not only one fight, he was one sickness away from being a face of the UFC, which you said was MMA. So he was one fight, one sickness away from being a face of mixed martial arts, and he's hardly the best fighter.
I mean, well, that's arguable. That he's a heavyweight champion. He got dethroned by Cain Velasquez, who is highly skilled heavyweight champion. I do agree with you. His limit, his 6 fights in the UFC did catch up with him. He's run into guys who have had more time in the octagon and more time to develop their skill. But at the end of the day, you're not just going in there and winning because you're big or you're strong. You're winning because you deserve to win. Like, there's no joke about that. In the UFC, like, just because they're not like an Anderson Silva, flashy and skilled, you know, I don't think that hurts the sport at all.
Well, let's look at it like this, right? When you look at MMA, and again, we're talking about public perception. So let's talk about the perception of what MMA is and why you get so many novice people coming and trying it. It's because of what they see when they're looking at these fights, and they see the same thing that they see when they come out of when they come out of a club. They see guys that are supposed to be technicians in many different styles that are standing up, flailing around a lot of punches. Someone gets caught with something big, it's a knockout. It's exciting. Wow, I saw a knockout. I don't see that in boxing anymore. Yep. These guys are too defensive. They dance around too much. These MMA guys are just going at it. But you told me coming in that I'm supposed to be watching a guy that is skilled in jiu-jitsu go against a guy that is skilled in kung fu. And all it looks like to me is 2 guys squaring up and hooking off. So, again, that's what the casual fan sees. The casual fan sees quick, exciting fights.
More finishes, exactly, and that's
knockouts.
Yep.
Blood, sweat, and tears, and I respect that. But again, when you're talking about MMA and what that's supposed to stand for and what you're supposed to be looking for, more times than not, you see something that looks more like a street fight than a display of martial arts. My father did martial arts for 30+ years. He won many tournaments in New York City. In my opinion, my father's the best martial artist to ever come out of New York City. And it never looked like a street fight. It always looked like 2 guys making moves to position themselves to do something else. And more times than not in the MMA, you find guys that just look like they're scrapping as opposed to guys that look like, okay, I'm setting somebody up.
See, I would disagree with that. I think it's really technical. When they get on the ground, they're playing defense and offense, and I just think you have to know what you're looking for if you want to look at it like that. But as the skill sets, you know, what we're talking about with the skills, I mean, George St. Pierre,
great fighter.
John Jones, all these guys aren't just one jiu-jitsu guy, one wrestling guy. The way MMA is nowadays, it's evolved to where you have to be great in all aspects.
Absolutely,
of the sport.
I point to the Rashad Evans Rampage Jackson fight where everyone thought they were going to stand up and scrap.
Right.
And Rashad said, no, I'm going to take him to the ground. I'm going to neutralize him. Great strategy. But how many fights on that card that night were guys just standing up, banging out?
I mean, well, That's another thing. There were at least 5 fights on that fight.
How many of them were guys standing up, just banging each other out, not on the ground trying to position each other, just guys going for it.
Yeah, but all the fights they start on the feet.
But again, okay, so I'm gonna point out a fight to you. My wife and I went and we watched James Toney, the boxer, great boxer.
Oh, I know he is.
Fight Randy Couture. Okay, all fights start on their feet, right? Quickly, Randy Couture said, "I'm taking this guy down."
Example.
No, it's a great example. I'm taking this guy down because Randy Couture has a skill, and he's not going to stand up with a guy that he has no business standing up with. That's strategy. But then my question, first thing I asked after I watched James Toney tap out, which wasn't unexpected, was, well, why didn't he put them in there with Chuck Liddell? Right? Chuck Liddell's an MMA fighter.
Yeah, but he's not a heavyweight.
Well, does it?
Because Tony's a heavyweight. That's why they had Couture.
You make weight. If you're paying James Toney to do something, he'll make the weight. But when you put guys in there, you talk about the styles. You talk about MMA guys, right? Chuck Liddell's, he's heavy-handed. He can knock you out with either hand. That has nothing to do with martial arts. That's a guy that's good with his hands. He'll throw a kick in there.
He's been out of the game for 3 years now.
I understand that, but we're talking about guys that help MMA or the UFC get to the point where it is now. Couture, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Rampage Jackson. The list goes on. So when you look at guys like this, people aren't looking at Chuck Liddell saying he's a great martial artist. They're looking at him saying he's a great fighter. And they're looking at Chuck Liddell like, you know what? If I go train, I can do that too because I hit hard. They're not looking at, they don't know what skills Chuck Liddell has. All they look at Chuck Liddell is catching someone with a right hook and they're going down. That's what they see with Chuck Liddell. So you're telling me that these fans, they see the art in it. They don't see it. They don't want to see it. They want to see a fight.
I think you can say that for both sports, though.
Right.
In fairness, I mean,
you can say absolutely. You can say that for both sports, but in boxing, you have to appreciate the skill because you see it more so than you see it in mixed martial arts.
See, I disagree completely. I disagree. I think there's plenty of skill in mixed martial arts.
I think it's on the eye of the beholder.
I know there's plenty of skills in mixed martial arts. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying anything any different. What I'm saying is
it's not the sweet science. I agree with that.
Listen, in terms of this, what you see, because in pure, like if you go and you speak to one of the Gracie guys, in pure skill, they'll show you so many different things that you want to see. But the average MMA fight, you don't see that skill. You see guys going for it, and it looks like a regular fight that's sanctioned. And people like to see fights, and they like to see that excitement. If something goes on, that animal feeling, and you see two guys going for it. But you don't look and say, "Oh, that's great skill." Now, Joe Rogan can sell you on anything he wants. The guy's a comedian.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know all of a sudden when he became this MMA aficionado, but you know what? He gets a check. He does a good job. But what I'm saying is this: for every great George St. Pierre fight, when he comes in with a different strategy to just take his opponent apart, you see two guys just going at it, standing in the middle of the ring. You're like, well, wait a minute.
And they finish each other.
And it's great.
It's exciting.
But let's call it what it is. That's not me saying I'm taking you to the ground. I'm trying to get you in the armbar. That's not me saying. Well,
it's a fight. You got to. I mean, where the fight goes, that's where you got to take it.
It's a fight.
Yeah.
And until that concept, it's always going to be a fight. But until that concept of it's a fight, it's out of MMA, and it's a showcase my skills, because that's what it was built on. My jiu-jitsu versus your karate. Who's going to execute better?
No, it's
MMA will never.
It's me as a martial artist against you as a martial artist.
But standing up, slugging it out, that has nothing to do with martial arts.
But that just generalizes everything. But doesn't always happen where you just stand and bang each other in the head.
Just as many, if not more, of those type of fights in MMA, you see the same. For every one George St. Pierre fight, you'll see 3 fights where guys are standing there banging out.
Well, I got to cut you both off. We could go hours arguing about this. This is fun. This is Eric Lopez, Brian Wininger, Jarrod Rudolph. This is a Mayweather-Ortiz preview fight. It was not intended for a boxing versus MMA conversation, but it is part of the story of the sport of boxing.
Did you set us up, Lopez?
I set it up.
You did.
Hey, this is beautiful stuff. I love this. This is great. The audience is enjoying this. I did bring up, by the way, I'll give you another one. You brought up earlier about the Lesnar example. What about George Foreman when he got his title shot, coming out of retirement at, 40-some years old?
George Foreman fought many years. And remember, his first title shot was against Evander Holyfield, and he lost. George Foreman lost twice. Maybe he lost twice in his comeback, and he knocked Michael Moore out.
He did. That was a great moment.
What do you want him to do?
Sure.
George Foreman didn't get his title shot the first month. George Foreman had to wait a couple of years to get his title shot. All the while, he's winning fights.
Okay.
But again, we've already established that there's some corruption in boxing.
True. Okay.
So, I mean, I can't say anything about that. Or I can say that the man fought the legitimate champion. He lost. He waited another 8 years to get a title shot, and he took advantage of it.
And to defend Lesnar, not like he needs defending at all, but the fact that he got a title fight with such short, without any fights pretty much to begin with, he still won the title. So I feel like that's irrelevant.
I take nothing away from what Brock does. So, I don't think what I say about Brock is I think that Brock has beaten guys that have been more skilled than him. So it looks like
based on
a brute, just eventually his size and his power is going to weigh down the guy that's a better fighter.
But he's a great wrestler.
I take nothing away from Brock. I just don't think I think that you have to do something in order to. I think it's very disrespectful to let a guy that, though he has a background in wrestling, it's not his immediate background. His immediate background was a failed football player. His background before that was a pro wrestler. Okay,
no, he is a wrestler.
Okay,
He's
he was a wrestler in Minnesota.
Before
okay?
football, before
way before. Okay,
yeah.
So he was a wrestler.
He was a wrestler in high school.
He was wrestling in high school for 4 years, right, and then 4 years in Minnesota.
4 years in Minnesota.
How long was he in the WWE?
3-4 years. Actually,
just to make a paycheck, though.
Oh no, I'm not knocking. Man's getting a check. He was great in the WWE.
Yeah.
Okay, but he was in the WWE. Let's say he was in WWE 4 years, right?
Yeah.
How long was the stint with the Minnesota Vikings? Let's say
maybe less than a year.
Yeah, training camp. Okay. How long between the Minnesota Vikings did he fight his first fight in MMA?
Like 3 years.
Okay,
2 years.
We're talking about 8 years of wrestling that we have established, right?
Yeah, and he trained those 2 years before.
Got you. And 7 years between wrestling and MMA, and within 2 years he had his first title shot after 4 fights. Mm-hmm. Not cool.
And he won, though. He won.
Okay, fine. He won.
So he deserved it.
No. He didn't deserve the shot.
But he won, though. So he ultimately did deserve it.
He deserved the title because he won, but he didn't deserve the shot.
But do you see what I'm saying?
Who did he beat? He beat Frank Mir for the championship, correct?
Right. He deserved the shot because the fight game is all about promotion. It's Brock Lesnar.
Okay, so that's what it's about.
That's what it was.
That's just Brock Lesnar. That always happens.
So we talking about Brock Lesnar, the overall presence, or we talking about Brock Lesnar, the MMA fighter? Because Brock Lesnar, the MMA fighter, did not deserve that title shot at the time he got it.
No,
he did not have enough.
He did deserve it. He did deserve it because he won.
So every guy with 3 fights deserves a title shot?
No, not every guy. Only Brock Lesnar. There's only one Brock Lesnar.
Why?
Because people know Brock Lesnar.
And because what?
Because he sells pay-per-views. And he's a great wrestler. He's a great athlete. Dana White says, I wouldn't have put this guy in there if I didn't know he could fight.
Dana White is saying, I'm going to use Brock Lesnar to push my sport, my organization, to the next level because he's a face. He's known. People like him. People hate him. People don't think he deserves the shot. People want to see him get the shot. So I'm going to put him in there even if he don't deserve it.
Either way, he won the belt.
While your commentators are saying, Brock's still a little green.
Yeah,
he's still doing this wrong. He's still doing that wrong. But he's so big that it just makes up.
He's so good. He's such a great athlete.
I think you're both right.
By the way, Brock puts his hand. Brock could choke both of us out right now.
Yeah.
Based on his strength alone, it has nothing to do with technique. It's me putting my hand under your throat and choking. He's a big, strong guy.
Right, but that's us, though. He's fighting other heavyweight,
and he's
heavyweight
bigger
fighters.
And stronger and faster.
He got knocked out by Cain Velasquez.
Hey. Shows you a whole lot, right?
Yeah. Well,
and what they say, well, he's still a little green.
No, they said his stand-up was garbage, which it is.
Yeah.
But he was still a two-time champion.
And
what's his record? What, like 8-2?
I'll chime in here.
6-2.
I'll chime in here, and then we'll move on to another topic. I think you're both right on this. Because I remember when Lesnar got that title fight, there was a lot of criticism in MMA about him getting it. But now, in Brian's defense, that is very rare in MMA and UFC. That was a unique experience.
I'm picking direct examples to make my point.
Sure, but no, hey, listen, that was fantastic stuff. By the way, so I'm impressed with your MMA knowledge. You're gonna watch the Rampage Jones fight?
Oh, no question.
What do you got there? What do you got?
I'm going with Rampage only because I want to see Rampage and Rashad again, but I want them to go right back on the Ultimate Fighter. Now, that Ultimate Fighter series with those two, I did not miss an episode. And I mean, I even watched them back to back. The back and forth between those two and hyping that fight was just incredible.
That was probably my favorite one.
They both have great personality. I love Rampage. I love those two guys when they get together. The fight was disappointing, but even that, what happens next time? Does Rashard stand up? Does Rampage figure something out? Did Rampage lose that fight because he was off making movies? Like, it's so much storyline between the second fight. So if he beats John Jones, I got to see him back in there with Rashard.
And do you hear about the new Ultimate Fighter, what they're doing now with it? How they're going to film the first 4 days and then have a live fight that week that the fans actually get to vote on now during the show.
The last thing I heard, well, Dana White said, Dana White's great. I remember Dana White was going to get in there and mix it up with Victor Ortiz. And that didn't happen. I was really disappointed. But even, that guy, boxing needs a Dana White.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
And because it's a double-edged sword here. You have one guy, pretty much, or the Fertitta brothers. You have three guys controlling a whole sport. So UFC or MMA, they're so fortunate to have the guys who know what they're talking about, because it could equally go the wrong way, and then they could screw up MMA. You know what I mean? But it's right, because
Dana White, he's a fan that. First of all, he took his frustrations, because he has a boxing background. He took his frustrations from what happened in boxing, and he took that over to MMA, and he gives fans fights they want to see. And if a guy's not producing, he gets rid of them. So I can't knock Dana White. I love what Dana White's doing. I just think that the comparisons to boxing in terms of how pure it is, I think it's a bit premature at this point, because MMA is still building, is still being shaped and formed. So I think that for a sport that's been around for 100 years, you got to pump your brakes there. In terms of popularity and everything like that, I think that MMA is more popular than boxing. I think it's far more popular than boxing, and I understand it, because fans are getting the excitement that they're not getting when they're paying $70 for a fight, and you're getting it more consistently, and it's something that people can relate to, because when they see these guys, they're like, oh, I can do that too. That's why you see so many guys now getting into MMA training and thinking that they can get in there. But that's where it ends for me. But I respect everything that Dana White does. I just do not agree that because a guy has a name and he can push your sport forward, that you need to put him in there before he's ready.
That's a fair hate. That's a beautiful point. That's Jarrod Rudolph, Brian Wininger here, Eric Lopez. Let's now go back to Mayweather-Ortiz this Saturday. Will this fight deliver? First, before we get into that main event and the keys to that fight, anything in the undercard that jumps out to you, Jarrod?
I'm going to look from Alfonso Gomez. I liked him on the Contender. He's getting a shot at the WBC title at 54. Interesting that they're having that fight in L.A. when everything else is in Vegas. But nobody cares about this undercard. You don't like this card. You said it's a weak card. Yeah, it's a weak card. Like, I'll watch Alfonso because I like what he did on the Contender, and I think Jesse Vargas is fighting also. And Floyd had thrown something out there that he would fight Amir Khan if Amir Khan beat Jesse Vargas. But Jesse Vargas is green. I think he has 16 fights. But no, Victor and Floyd. That's all that really matters on Saturday night. And I think it'll definitely deliver, because Victor's young, he has a little bit of speed, and he knows that he has to get Floyd while Floyd is adjusting to that left hand, so he's going to attack Floyd, but it's going to work against him. You cannot press a guy like Floyd.
What does he have to do to pull off the upset?
Well, you got to pull off the upset, he's got to catch Floyd with something that Floyd can't recover from. But in order to do that, he has to establish a jab and set his punches up. That's just not who Victor is. He does not jab. He gets hit a lot. In his last two fights, Lamont Peterson, that was a draw. Lamont was catching him with everything but the kitchen sink. And remember, he went down twice against Andre Berto.
Yeah.
So
is his chin a question mark suspect?
No, I don't think.
You don't think so?
I don't think he has a suspect chin. The problem is it's always out there for you to touch and for you to test it. Floyd hits and doesn't get hit. Ortiz hits and gets hit. Floyd's not going to be available for Victor to hit. And he's going to get touched. He's going to get. Floyd, he lands at 40%. That's not by accident. I think that he'll stop him in the later rounds. But Victor has to be very, very careful early, because if he comes charging in there trying to catch Floyd with something, it could be an early night. You cannot press that man. You have to be very strategic when you go in there against Floyd and set something up. And Victor does not jab.
No, and you got to be. Yeah, that's going to hurt him against Mayweather there. Brian, your thoughts on the fight?
I love Floyd Mayweather. I want to see him fight. I hope it's a finish. I know Floyd Mayweather's probably going to end with a unanimous decision, but we'll see. Is that pretty accurate? You think he's going with a unanimous decision?
I think he stops him. I think he stops him in 9.
9th round.
Technical.
Is this stage too big for Ortiz, or you think he'll handle it?
Oh, it's tough. He's never. The lights are bright.
Right.
Lights are bright.
That plays a role in this, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, it does. Lights are bright. 2.5 million.
Biggest payday of his career.
If you win, that 2.5 turns to 10, and the stage gets even brighter. And even if you lose your next fight, it still doesn't dim for a while. But a win for this kid could put him on, Pacquiao's 35, 36, Floyd's 34, and You know,
and he's 24, right?
Yeah, he's 24.
Yeah.
And he'll, regardless of what happens tomorrow night, he'll be champion again. You know, he's going to be a good.
You like his
fighter.
future?
Yeah, no, he's going to be a good young fighter for a long time. But Floyd is a different animal, man, and I just don't think this kid has the game to beat Floyd. He's got to catch him with something big, but you got to set someone. You're not going to catch Floyd walking into anything. You have to get very, very lucky, and he doesn't have the skills to set Floyd up. And what does he do when Floyd makes that first adjustment? He won't see the same Floyd Mayweather the whole fight. Victor will be the same fighter for 9 rounds or 12 rounds. Floyd will change up at some point, and what does he do to recover? How does he handle Floyd changing up on him? I just don't think he has it in him.
I agree. I got Mayweather by decision as well. What's next for both fighters quick after this fight? Where do they go from here?
Well, I think ultimately, Mayweather's going to end up having a rematch with Juan Manuel Marquez, because I don't think Pacquiao beats Marquez. I think Marquez.
Ooh, that's in November. We have to bring you back for that preview of that fight.
Marquez won those first 2 fights, and I think he'll get it done this time. So I think, you know, this is what happens when you don't make the fight. You lose a $60 million payday, and no one's going to pay $60 million to watch Floyd and Juan Manuel again. But, you know, maybe that's a good.
So you say Mayweather gets the winner of that fight? Let's call it that. Would you say that? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Who else is going to fight? You know, he's not going to go straight to
no retirement.
Oh no.
It's too much money.
No.
Too much money.
And then, you know, if he decides that he does want to fight Pacquiao coming off of a loss, which is usually not Floyd's style, all the bargaining chips belong to him now.
Sure.
He'll get the bigger
payday. No one wants to see that. If
Pacquiao
loses to Marquez,
people have wanted to see Pacquiao fight after losses.
I think it's greatly diminished if that's the case.
It hurts it a little bit.
It hurts it a lot.
Of course it hurts it, but you're not looking at undefeated against undefeated. Pacquiao's lost before.
Right.
Well, gentlemen, I know this. We're going to have a rematch of this. This was a tremendous pleasure. This was fun. We're going to do this again on ESPN1080.com. Jarrod, tell the audience where they can find you.
I'm on RealGM.com. You know, I make appearances.
Cover a little NBA.
Cover a little NBA, a little NFL, obviously a little bit of boxing. 1040 with Steve Kyler.
Yep.
In the game. And,
it's up in Tampa.
Just around.
And you're on Twitter.
Yes, I'm on Twitter, Mr. Rudolph. It's spelled out M-I-S-T-E-R, Rudolph.
Beautiful. And, of course, Brian, they can find you on Twitter.
ESPN Dub, DUB.
Well, gentlemen, this was fun, and enjoy the Mayweather-Ortiz fight. Saturday night should be a good one. Enjoyed. I hope the audience enjoyed this preview of Floyd Mayweather versus Victor Ortiz for ESPN1080.com. For Jarrod Rudolph, for Brian Wininger, I'm Eric Lopez. This has been special ESPN1080.com here on ESPN 1080, the team.